Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Friday night's edition of Center Stage. I'm Kheri, Hines, your host. Alongside me tonight is my co-host, A.J. Houston and Mr. Christopher Barnes. Tonight, we await the decision from the Darren Wilson grand jury, and we understand it could be any minute now. It has been over 100 days since Mike Brown was shot and killed execution style by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. However, many are speculating Darren Wilson will not be indicted. Some believe that is what caused Governor Jay Nixon on Monday by executive order to declare Missouri in a state of emergency ahead of the decision. This is the first time in history that the mere thought of angry black people protesting in the streets caused a state of emergency to be declared. Tonight, we want to look at everything. What happens if Wilson is not indicted? We want to talk about the protesters' demand. They have some rules of engagement they're asking law enforcement to adhere to. We also want to talk about the economic boycott being declared on Thanksgiving and Christmas spending. We also want to talk about has mainstream media turned against the protesters. Another thing we want to look at tonight is if Wilson isn't indicted, does this send the wrong message to law enforcement? Does it say that black life does not matter? Let's talk about it tonight. Our topic is Ferguson, under state of emergency. Ferguson, under state of emergency. If you want to get on the phone lines tonight, call us up at 347-850-8390. Let us hear from you. We want to know what your thoughts are on some of the things I just mentioned or anything concerning the Ferguson situation, Mike Brown, Bob McCullough, your police chief down there in Ferguson, just the whole gamut of how this runaway train has gotten the attention of the world. We want to talk about all of that tonight. So my co-hosts are with me already in the building, Mr. A.J. Houston and Christopher Vaughn. Good evening. How y'all doing?
Hey, Chris. Hey, Kheri. Y'all doing all right?
Okay.
Yes, we're doing good. Glad to hear you, A.J.
Yeah, you too,
guys, we're like maybe minutes from hearing what the grand jury has to say in this particular case. What do you all thought as we wait now 100-plus days to hear their decision when we understand that basically it could be done in a matter of hours? So what are you all thoughts tonight as we await their decision?
Well, me personally, I think I think it was planned to wait past the elections anyway. So that way, and right before the holidays, so you got so much going on, so they was thinking that it would be squeaked in between something else. And plus President Obama just made this speech that's got everybody in an uproar, all the Republicans in an uproar. So it's like when you throw something in the mix, it's like they don't think it'll pay that much attention. But I think them calling for, all the police and everybody, riot gear and everything as though they were expecting a riot. See, I was looking at some of the footage from the old civil rights movements, and it was a peaceful rally. But it's hard to say that the black people in the movement was beating up the water hoses and the dogs.
Really?
Sometimes when you have all the impact against you, it looks like you're fighting back.
Oh. So do you think we're talking about water hoses and dogs again?
Well, I saw a clip from MSNBC that had, the K9 units out. So I think they have dogs, but, it's really no telling because the slightest instance, just like the slightest movement can just make everything be completely out of bounds.
I agree. Christopher, what are your thoughts?
And you know what, Kheri and AJ, I've been being prayerful and just thinking about the whole situation of just the nationwide troublings with police misconduct and police brutality. And I came across an article, and in that article I was reading some of the ones you sent me as well. But when it basically talks about the grand jury and what any given grand jury, in this, particularly this case, is comprised of, what troubles me is the grand jury itself being basically an extension, or it's under the umbrella of the prosecutor's office in the state's attorney's office. So the bottom line with that is that when I know myself that I don't have that warm and fuzzy level of comfort that the civil authorities are actually realistically going to take the concerns of their so-called constituents, the people, the taxpayer, and they tend to make decisions that are in the best interest that they think, not necessarily based on innocent and guilt, unless that's me and you as the citizens. But as police officers, again, what's troubling is that even when police officers rogue and just point-blank do things that violate people's civil rights, commit murders, heinous things, they're not held to the same standard. So, yes, my prayer is that there will be some reasonable consideration that there's enough on the table for probable cause. But the reality is that it's Mr. McCullough, it's the prosecutor who drives the wheel. Because guess what? The prosecutor, even after an indictment is given, the prosecutor can turn right back around and dismiss the case or keep that case in play. So the biggest troubling thing for me is that it is no surprise we're basically dealing with an organization that in a sense, in general, is corrupt. And I don't expect the reasonable consideration, even when civil authorities commit crimes, that they're going to be held accountable. And I think that they have a plan B, a fallback to, in terms of what will we be able to put out to the people, that there may be a little bit, in this case, violence, but how can we mitigate it? And I think AJ is absolutely right. The decision has been made. It doesn't take a grand jury that long, and they're not deliberating on this case that long. And since this grand jury has had cases from the same prosecuting office previously, I think the writing's on the wall. But I would just hope that there is some way to tear down those fibers within the state's attorney's office, which tend to be on the side of the police, even when the police do wrong.
This is where I'm at tonight, y'all. Huh?
Now, I wanted to add one thing. I said one thing I think is in the favor of this particular indictment is that you have so many people chiming in, the president and the attorney general and all these people. So now there's more eyes on them than they wanted. So that may be why it's taking so long, because now they can't just do the good old boy thing the way good old boys usually do it.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Speaking of our president, I'm a little disappointed, Mr. President, and I love my president, so don't even think that I have like an axe to grind with him. I don't. Other than to say, I think by executive order, our police department needs to be held accountable, and I think that needs to be the next executive order put on the table, that if you shoot someone, there are consequences. Whether you are law enforcement or a regular citizen, you have to go before the process that anyone else has to. You're going to be indicted, and then the chips are going to fall where they may when you go before a jury and a judge. And I think that's what we've got to change in this country, and I'd like to see our president do that by executive order, because I think unless we do that and many other things, we will continue to see the results of what looks like black life doesn't matter. And tonight we're here to say we believe just the opposite. And I think we're going to have to support the protesters if we want change. Those people have, in my opinion, been the most courageous people I've seen in a century. I mean, they were, in my opinion, going up against a Goliath, but they were fearless and have been fearless and continue to be fearless. And they go out there every day, now plus 100 days plus, and they're still out there marching in the rain, marching in the cold. They marched in the heat. They took tear gas. They took rubber bullets, and they're still out there. And any of us who are sitting in the comfort of our homes and don't support them, shame on us, because eventually the beast will be at our door. That's a given. And so tonight I urge anybody, if you can't do anything, you can join the economic boycott of Christmas and Thanksgiving spending. At least let your voice be heard through your spending. Do not allow another person to be killed. And I understand someone sent me something today. Someone was killed in New York today by a rookie cop. I mean, this has got to stop. And so get on the phone line tonight. I'd like to hear from you. Are you going to do anything as far as these protests concerned? Everybody can't make it to Ferguson. Everybody can't make it to the St. Louis area, but everybody can do something, whether that's support the protesters financially, in terms of sending them care packages, pray for them, do something. But everybody has a responsibility if we want to see change in this situation. And I think by now everyone realizes police brutality is an issue. And we realize that there doesn't seem to be any accountability where police are concerned when it deals with whether someone is killed or whether someone is roughed up. There's no accountability, and that's got to change. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to 314-853. Good evening. You're on center stage.
How you doing today?
Fine. How you doing?
I know you probably don't want to hear my voice, but I'm calling back anyway.
Well, call back anyway. I do want to hear your voice.
The way you beat me up last week, but that's all right. I'm not going to worry about that. You know, I was listening to the mayor of St. Louis talking about peace. Okay. Anybody know the United States have never wanted any peace? You agree with that? Huh? They never wanted any peace. Have you ever known the United States to want peace?
No, not really. I mean, if you want to meet on the free, no.
No, and you will never get peace as long as you got racism and discrimination in America. You'll never get peace. Now, they say everything starts at home. You take care of home first, right?
Right.
Is Obama taking care of home, or is he over there dealing with ICs or ASCIs or whatever they call it? You got a war among black people right here in America. Supposed to be taking care of home first. Why is he over there doing what he's doing?
I think we cannot expect that the world is going to listen to anything we say when we have issues with police brutality and police shootings. I don't think anybody's listening to us anymore.
Well, he should be straightening these police. If he's any kind of president, he should be straightening. Everybody in the United States that's not a racist or a bigot know that police executed that boy. We going back to the Emmett Till cases, all white juries. They'll never get away from that.
You know what I think Mike Brown's family did wrong in this case, and hear me out before you say it. No, I'm telling you what they did wrong. They did wrong by not opening the casket. They absolutely should have done it Emmett Till and let the world see what Ferguson police did to their son. I think they absolutely should have held an open casket and let everybody who wanted to attend the memorial come and see exactly what Ferguson police had done to their son. That's what they did wrong. If there's anything that they did wrong, that's it.
And let me say this, Miss Kheri. You know, all the beatings, the dogs, they sicked on black people. I look at all of those black people that sit in that restaurant, got the hell beat out of them, spit on, kicked on. And because of the athletes, the movie stars, and all of them, that's what they was fighting for them to be in the position they are in now. But they're not fighting. They're not fighting for what's happening now. They have made it, got their money. They don't give a doggone about what's going on to poor people now. And that's what angers. That's what angers me. They're not gonna fight for these people now. The black men ran over and married white women. The black women have married white men. They're not thinking of this thing is all about you. It's an individual thing when it comes to black people. You got all of these black in positions that won't open their mouth. That's what happens with a position. You can't say anything. Why would anybody put somebody in a position to go against them? They're not going to do that.
I agree. I absolutely agree. That's probably why they didn't want the slaves to read, because they knew if they ever learn to read, then they would soon want to be free. So I agree with you, old timer. I so agree with everything. For the first time, I think I've agreed with you everything you said tonight. I completely agree.
Well, I'm glad you did. Well, it don't make no difference because people gonna think the way that they want to think. And it's long. What you say?
No, I was Go ahead. Go ahead,
Kheri. I'm sorry.
You know, in Major, what's his name?
Christopher Bonds, Major Christopher Bonds.
Christopher Bond. You know, I went on the internet and watched that. I seen how he was dealing with, and see, this man fought for his so-called country, and look what they doing here. And I'm saying that he better leave well enough alone. This is just me. He better leave well enough alone. If he got away and got out of that, if he gonna spend a lot of money trying to fight these folks, you can't be the person in their own game.
Now you didn't open the can of worms. Okay, we gonna move on, old timer. Thank you very much, because you could agitate Christopher. Thank you for calling in tonight. Christopher, do you want to respond before we move on, or leave that one alone?
No, it's not it may be a can of worms, but it's a can that does need to be opened. See, there's a thing that's called classification. There's a thing that's called status quo, and go with the flow. Well, I thought long and hard before I did anything, and I was prayerful. See, the Bible says first count up the cost. So believe, and I appreciate people reading my story or any story that's of tragedy or civil authority misconduct. But you have to understand that in my case, the reason that I'm still in this dogfight 6 years later is not because of Christopher Vines. It's because the Spirit of God has propped me up, supported me up, and kept me up, both financially, emotionally, and physically. So the bottom line is that I am not in this fight because I have an axe to grind per se with the city of Chicago and the police department. I am in this because there is a law, and we go back again to when anything happens, whether it happens to us or someone else, what can we do to affect change? Well, in this case, I'm trying to affect change because there's a particular law in the books that will help folks when they do get arrested, of what you can then do to the authorities and make it more plausible for an individual that does not have resources to still have legal representation, adequate legal representation, and have their day in court, not be in jail for 2 and 3 years before they get their trial. So the bottom line is this. When I looked at all the black folks and the white folks that I reached out to, the black folks in Congress, the Senate, and so forth, here's the bottom line with the case that we're dealing today with Michael Brown. If you notice, the president is not the only one that has a degree of executive power. The Senate does. The Congress does, the mayor does, and also the state attorney general, even before you would have to elevate it to the Department of Justice. But this is the thing I learned when I was counting up the costs. The Spirit of God spoke to me and told me that these people, if you do just basically fade away, they're not going to get any better in terms of the representation of the people and what they do. So am I going to just be satisfied? Woo! I escaped that bullet and I don't have to go to jail. But what about another brother or sister? So I am in this fight because there are still people being wrongfully arrested, convicted, and incarcerated. So I am not worried. And see, I'm beyond fear. See, once you get beyond fear, death doesn't mean anything other than that just means that when I die and I die right, I'm going to be with Jesus. So I want the caller to understand that I had to then do this because I have 2 sons and I have a daughter. And I don't want them to think when the white establishment, the white supremacy aspect of governmental affairs affects you, then you go run and stick your head in the sand. So it was a personal decision that I made, but I also believe it was one that the Lord has my back because I wouldn't be able to be in the fight at this point.
Well, if you just tuned in, you come center stage tonight for the topic, Ferguson under the state of emergency. Ferguson under a state of emergency. I'm Kheri Hines, your host. We're talking about everything tonight. Ferguson, everything concerning the Mike Brown case. How does it feel to have lived for over 100 days under the tension that is building in that region? I mean, the St. Louis region, in my opinion, if we feel it all the way where I'm at, and I'm thousands of miles away, I can just imagine what it must feel like to be where you all are, and there's militarized police presence where you're seeing armored vehicles coming and going, you're seeing helicopters flying overhead, you're getting all types of mixed messages from the grand jury to your governor, to your mayor, to your police chief. There's a lot of mixed messages going on there. So to me, in my opinion, just sitting back and just watching everything that's going on, you're looking at, a war between Anonymous and the KKK. There's a lot of back and forth. I can't tell if that's going to get violent. We know it's definitely gotten very wordy. We're seeing the protesters asking for rules of engagement. They're basically asking the law enforcement to do their job. Wear a badge when you come out here. Don't come out here with all of this, rifles and rubber bullets and tear gas. We're peaceful protesters, and we just wanted to be able to exercise our freedom of speech without, being arrested or being shot at or being fired upon. All of these things are going on down there. So if I were someone who had to come and go in that area and see all of that, I can only imagine what that must be doing to the psyche. And my question is it intentional? Are they trying to stress everybody out? And if so, what's going to be the payoff? Do they want people to just go away? I mean, because, there's speculation, like I said in the intro. Darren Wilson may not be indicted. If he's not indicted, then what? Does that leave, Ferguson in a situation of being basically a powder keg? Because I believe the protests are going to kick back off. But my question is, will they turn deadly this time? Because we understand that there's all types of, people coming into Ferguson. I think your police department is saying that they're seeing license plates from all over the country that they haven't seen before. And are these provocateurs, agitators? Some of them are they double agents? Those are things that I would just, if I lived there, I would be worried about. AJ and Christopher, would that be concerns of you all if you all saw that?
Yeah, Kheri, I think it's going to be very important in terms of hopefully an organized or even on an individual level how people proceed, because people have to understand that the folks that are going to be out there in terms of the police or the National Guard or additional police, FBI, and so forth, they're going to have orders, and they're going to have orders and rules of engagement that are probably going to be lessened. The standard is probably going to be dropped. So depending on how people act or react will also depend on how those civil authorities are going to carry out their job. And they're going to basically pretty much, once the governor of a state calls out the National Guard, which is a state militia, they have weapons, and they have weapons that at any point will more than likely be armed. And so people have to keep that in mind. Not to say you do not protest, but to say that it really needs to be very organized. They need to do backwards plan, which I believe that they are. But with that being said, you still have to be careful because the authorities, they're looking, and people don't want to believe it, but they are looking for reasons to do things, because if they can squash this, again, slavery. It's that example. Let's whip this slave so we can try and teach the rest of the slaves and the field Negroes they better not attempt or even think about escaping. So it's the same type of mentality. So people have to keep that in mind because it's still here.
I agree with that. I mean, I saw today on, I think it was CNN, that they have like 100 FBI agents submerging on Ferguson. And I'm like, why would Ferguson need 100 FBI agents? I mean, y'all listen, that's reason for concern. I mean, in my opinion, that says something. What, I don't know yet, but that says something very, very suspect. That they would need 100.
Kheri, guess what? After this 100+ days, see, when the FBI are involved, that elevates the control of the situation to the federal level. Now, at the federal level versus the state municipal level, now once the FBI is in there, technically everybody falls under the FBI. So now you can operate like the FBI and not like civil municipal authorities because it has been elevated. And now that the Guard, when they're activated, they're federalized. So they don't operate the same way than the police do. So now the police, that's what I'm saying, the standard in terms of what they can do is going to fall under the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which means they have a lot more leeway. The FBI can come to your house and do things in a certain way that your city police can't.
That don't sound good.
So people have to even be that much more cautious because the FBI is involved.
Listen, that don't sound good. Now let's go back to the phone line. Whoever this is, I cannot identify your number, but it's coming up as a 111, maybe your Skype number. Good evening. You're on Center Stage. Hello, 111-1111. You're coming up as a number that I can't identify. Hello.
Hines?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. Well, hello, everyone. This is Nanny, and I wanted to add to the conversation is that this is Katrina Part 2. And
yes,
what I mean by that is that so many folk, and I'm talking about black folk, did not support the people of Katrina that had to deal with the police brutality, the militarization of the military there. We saw General Honore go in, and he had to order the soldiers to put their guns down, and they wouldn't listen to him. But in addition to that, I've been reading a lot of the websites that are frequented by white folk, and they bring up Katrina, OJ, and they're saying that Mike was a thug and all the people protesting need to die, just kill us outright. And what concerns me is that there isn't enough support for the protesters. There are a lot of black folk that are saying whatever the niggas get, they deserve. This is coming from black people. So with that being said, how do we get these folks that are not on the bandwagon to support in any way that they can from the list that you gave a few minutes ago? But this is certainly part 2 of Katrina.
You know, that's a good question. You know, caller, I really think, and I've seen some myself, all of those that I call being extremely politically correct, they don't want to get involved because they think Ferguson is over there. So because I'm over here, it's not affecting me. But in actuality, it is affecting you because if Officer Darren Wilson is allowed to shoot a man 7 times in broad daylight with his hands up saying, please don't shoot, only God be with the rest of us. And so, I mean, you know, I just think we're naive to believe that we're safe if Michael Brown wasn't safe in broad daylight on a very narrow street at 12 o'clock noon on a Saturday, which, you know, and being in front of an apartment complex in the hood on a Saturday at 12 noon, you know, people are out everywhere. And if he can be shot and killed in front of numerous eyewitnesses, and Officer Darren Wilson can go in there 3 months later, you know, basically craft his testimony around all the eyewitness accounts, and he walks, only God knows what's in store for the rest of us. That's the way I see it, caller. That's the way I see it. Only God be with us. You know, I agree. Everybody needs to do something. whether that's pray, send some financial support, send some care packages, do something, sign a petition, be a part of a phone bank, do something. But everybody has a responsibility to make sure there's not another Mike Brown, there's not another Oscar Grant, there's not another Eric Garner, there's not another Von Derek Myers. All of us have that responsibility, and if we don't do anything, this will continue to happen. That's just my belief. Colin, I'm sorry.
I would like to add one more thing that most folk don't know about, and it has to do with Katrina. Many of the black folk that were still there after the flooding were rounded up. When you saw them getting on buses, a lot of those buses did not leave the city. They took them to holding pens that had barbed wire, and they were guarded by the military. So to think that we can't be rounded up and held in pens is really something that black folks should take out of their heads, because it can happen. It did happen, and it didn't happen in 1965, 85, 75. It happened in 2005.
That is so true. That is so true, and a mouthful. That is true. And, and Katrina, there were so many things that I saw and you saw and everybody else saw that went wrong, and we didn't do anything. So I agree with her. This is Katrina Part 2, because we didn't do it right the last time. And we have so many ways in which we can affect change in this. You know what? I wouldn't spend, I have nieces and nephews, and I mistakenly told them that I was going to, do Christmas, and then thought about the boycott. And I had to call them back and say, listen, Auntie Kheri's not doing that because, we're boycotting this Ferguson situation, so I can't buy Christmas this year. And I mean that. And if I would do that for my own nieces and nephews, which I love dearly, I say that everybody else needs to realize that this is too important. This is too important. I wouldn't go in a Walmart. I wouldn't go in a Best Buy. I wouldn't go in a Sam's Club for nothing in the world on Black Friday. They could be giving away TVs for 2 cents, and I wouldn't get one, because it's just too important. And I think everybody has to make up their mind the importance of this and sacrifice. Everybody's got to sacrifice. Well, thank you, caller. We're going to go to 314-381. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Hello, Kheri. How are you?
Fine, Bianchi. How are you?
Pretty good.
What are your thoughts this evening? I'm assuming we haven't heard anything. I don't have a TV going, but I'm assuming we haven't heard the grand jury decision yet. How is the tension in that area now as everybody's awaiting the grand jury decision?
Well, it's a great expectation, as you would expect it. I just left a event put on by the Demetrius Johnson Foundation where they was packing up baskets for Thanksgiving deliveries tomorrow. And Mr. Brown, he was there, and his wife and their family. This is about maybe a half hour ago. An hour ago, actually, from 6:30 to about 7 o'clock. And I talked to him. Matter of fact, he knows my daughter. He knew me, too. So they was in pretty good spirits. There's a lot of people there. We packed up about over 2,000 baskets for people who's, misfortunate and on their back. Had a lot of young people there and some dignitaries and so on and so on.
Were they expecting the decision tonight?
Well, the decision will probably come tomorrow. Well, it might come tonight. I don't know. Like I told you, we don't expect that officer to be indicted. But even if he was indicted, it would just play out in court. The prosecutor is Bob McCullough, which this community has little confidence in.
Well, what are your thoughts on Darren Wilson possibly resigning?
Well, that's one of the demands. He's got to go. He got to go, and the police chief's got to go. There's going to be racial makeup, a difference in the makeup of these police Not only Ferguson, but the other ones also.
Well,
We're going to have training.
I think we heard
We're going to
earlier
have training. Well, go ahead.
We heard earlier in the week that the police chief was going to resign, and we saw that didn't happen. You know, there was some rumors, and, you know, the media truck showed up, but he didn't resign. So is this another ploy to say Wilson is going to resign and he may not resign as well?
Well, he's going. How could Wilson stay at that police force and patrol that area? He couldn't patrol none of these communities around here because he's marked. Well, nobody paying attention to him. They throw eggs at him and everything else.
Wow. So he's been on paid leave for over 100 days, and then all of a sudden he just gets to resign and take away that $500,000 that they collected for him?
Well, if the Justice Department finds some tangibles there, then that $500,000 would be up for grabs by a lawsuit.
Is it taxable money, by the way? I mean, when somebody just gets $500,000 donated to them, do they get a chance to is that tax-free money, y'all?
I don't know if it is or not. I'm not you have to ask a tax person on that. But anyway, like I said, you know, there's a movement for doing, and you know, that's what other people should, you know, I gave you a list. I think the one I gave you was 12 points. There's a 15-point list that we gave you. That's things that's being played out here as far as making economic change, changing the law as it applies to daily force, and people in other areas should do the same thing. If you stay in a community that's 90% black, and you got 90% white police force, same thing with the fire department, city hall, public works, then you should work to change that.
I agree. I know that the protesters made some demands. I did get that list, and there was like 19 demands on there. I'm going to kind of read only number 3, 5, 7, and 9. And these are important, y'all, because, you know, they're engaging in, you know, I don't know what I want to call that, you know, the engagement that there's back and forth with the protesters and the officers. But we know it got very dangerous. One lady was shot in the head. I believe she goes by the name Spook. You know, they took her into surgery to take out that bullet, and now all of a sudden the bullet came up missing. So, you know, I understand she's getting a runaround about what happened, you know, in that situation. But we know someone was shot in the head. We know rubber bullets were shot. We know tear gas was fired on the protesters. All of that went down. We know that they, you know, took them through a lot of, I call it psychological warfare, when they had them marching in a circle and then go in the street and go on the sidewalk and then, you know, hold up one foot, all kind of crazy stuff. So Ferguson protesters came up with a group or a list of demands. I'm only going to read 3, 5, 7, and 9 because those were the only ones that I thought were really interesting. They're asking that the crowd control equipment such as armored vehicles, rubber bullets, rifles, and tear gas will not be used. This is what the protesters are asking, y'all. But the police responded back and said the Unified Command believes public safety should help determine the best tools to keep people safe. So to me, that's AKA we going to do what we want to do. Rule number 5, the protesters ask that every attempt will be made to pinpoint arrest so that only individual lawbreakers will be arrested. And then they said kettling, I'm not sure what that means, and mass arrest will not be used. So I guess there's kind of like looking over, I guess I'm just assuming this is what's going on here, where they're looking and seeing a troublemaker, and then they're getting everyone in that area. Well, the protesters are saying, please don't do that, just get the troublemaker. But law enforcement fired back and said Unified Command agrees with the first sentence. Well, the first sentence was every attempt will be made to pinpoint arrest so that only individual lawbreakers will be arrested. So they're not promising that they won't do mass arrest. Number 7 dealt with media and legal observers shall not be considered participants in protests and shall be allowed to do their jobs freely. The police department responded back and said Unified Command believes everyone should be treated as general public parties acknowledge and agree the media and members of the public have the right to record public events without abridgment unless it obstructs the activity and safety of others or physically interferes with the ability of law enforcement to perform their duties. So, again, AKA, if you get in our way, we're going to arrest you too. Number 9, strategically, police commanders will allow protests to take and occupy larger and more disruptive spaces than would normally be tolerated and will allow occupation of those spaces for longer periods of time than would normally be tolerated. And police responded back case-by-case basis, which is AKA probably not. So, I commend those who came up with these rules of engagement, but I don't think they're going to play fair. That's what I get from their responses. Would y'all agree with that? Don't look like they're going to play fair? That's just me. I don't expect anything to go
well. The county executive, the governor, and the mayor of St. Louis laid out a list of things that they're going to comply with. Mayor Slade, county executive Dooley, they're the ones that puts those rules out, not the police department. Police department can have input, but ultimately the police department works for the mayors and the county executive. Another point. The police that's going to be placed on that area is going to be working behind the National Guard, and much emphasis has been said that they're there to make sure that the protesters' constitutional rights, the constitutional protections are being adhered to, and the police is basically working behind them.
See, I think didn't the ACLU do something? Because I have something that says in August, attorneys for the Missouri State Highway Patrol, the County of St. Louis, and the City of Ferguson signed an agreement with the ACLU of Missouri stating that protesters and the media had the right to record law enforcement officers. But that agreement was disregarded many times in the last few months. So the ACLU went back to court last Friday and filed a preliminary injunction. And today, the United States District Judge John A. Ross granted 3 court orders against the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the County of St. Louis and the City of Ferguson. In essence, the court order requires that police respect the First Amendment rights of journalists now and will be, or there will be, immediate recourse if the freedom of speech is violated. So it does look like, they've got some lawyers working with them to try to rectify that, but I say under the cloud of darkness, anything is possible. What do y'all say? Would y'all agree with that? I think
you try.
Huh?
I think you try to instigate some things, Kheri.
I am not. You know what? That is the last thing. You know what I am? I'm a realist, and I think that there is no reason that you would get that type of militarized police presence down there, and your governor actually state of emergency ahead of anything happens if they don't plan for something. And speaking of that, why did your
Well, you had to declare a state of emergency in order to bring the National Guard in, right?
Okay, first of all,
isn't that what happened down in Katrina? Isn't that what happened down in Katrina? The federal government couldn't just go into Orleans.
The governor doesn't have to declare that because the governor controls the National Guard, period. That's basically the governor is the chief and commander for the National Guard because they're a state militia, unlike the Army Reserve.
The governor had to declare a national emergency in Missouri. Just like the governor, she didn't declare a national emergency, or she didn't ask the federal government to come into New Orleans. That's why Bush didn't say anything about it. States have rights. The federal government just can't go marching into a state unless the governor asks for them to come in.
Okay, let me tell you the indicators that I see that there's going to be a problem. Okay, y'all decide for yourself, and I'm not instigating, but I can read the tea leaves from, Orbit or somewhere. When you get through, the governor called the state of emergency ahead of anything happening. You got got a militarized police presence there. You got over 100 FBI agents on the ground in Ferguson, and the Ferguson Barnes Christian Hospital is preparing for mass casualties. We understand that trauma treatment basically for soon-to-happen riots will be handled by Barnes Christian Hospital at 11125 Dunn Road in St. Louis. We understand that 3 floors have been cleared out in anticipation of victims of rioting. We understand 1 floor is for injured police. Another floor is for injured protesters. And the 3rd floor is going to be for injured police family members. Okay, does anybody see a problem with me? Besides
well,
me?
they're preparing. They would be well prepared. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Ms. Caskell has already put out an order for the police departments to disarm with all this military equipment. She made a point of that a long time ago. Ms. Caskell is a state senator, a U.S. state senator, by the way.
But your mayor is down there lying, saying that y'all don't even have any new heavy equipment down there when we know that's not true. I think Antonio
the mayor of Ferguson. See, here's the point. See, you keep thinking that Ferguson is Los Angeles. Ferguson is nothing but a small little community. It's a municipality. That's all it is. It's a municipality. If you walk up under the bridge, you in Country Club Hills across Lucas and Hunt. If you go further enough west across 270, you're in a whole different municipality. If you go to Chambers Road and go north, you in Moline Acres, Castle Point. So it's just a small little municipality.
And so for that little municipality, you need 100 FBI agents, the governor to call for a state of emergency, and you need the hospitals to prepare for mass casualties. And you say ain't nothing gonna happen? I disagree with you.
And the FBI agents are there to not watch the people. The FBI agents are there to watch the authorities and make sure people's civil rights are not being violated.
Now you're being naive. Okay, area code 814-520. Good evening, you're on Center Stage.
Well, I've only been around here for about 44 years.
But you ain't never told what's happening going to happen now. 814-520. Good evening, you're on Center Stage.
Yes, hi, Kheri. This is Heather. How are you tonight?
Fine, how are you?
I'm good. I think it is funny that they would be having those hospitals on reserve, but I do understand the gentleman that was just speaking's point. It's in preparation in case something were to happen. And so they are expecting to have a lot of people there, and there are a lot of boots on the ground, as I would say, as far as protesters that are going to go out there and protest. The one thing that I can only hope is that there will be an indictment, which, all you need is probable cause, which is enough articulable evidence to lead a reasonable person to believe that more likely than not a particular person committed a particular crime. So it's only 51% of the burden, and that's not a high standard. So a lot of people, I think, it is a good possibility he will be indicted with a lot of the information I've seen, but a lot of people are thinking on the lines of a trial, like they're thinking this is a trial. You'll hear a lot of people say verdict, and this isn't a verdict, it's a decision on whether or not he should be charged, which is just probable cause. So there's a decent chance that could happen. Whether I think it will or not, I'm hoping and I'm praying that it will, just because it'll continue to set a precedent that when you overstep your bounds and you violate the rights of others and violate his Sixth Amendment to due process, that there are consequences for that. Like they can't, a shiny badge doesn't give you extra rights. So I'm hoping for that. But I think that he's right. That these preparations have to be made, because if they're not, I'm not saying the riot here. I've been watching a live stream where they'll just be charging a group of people out of nowhere and throwing them on the ground. I'm not saying that at all. But as far as the hospitals and things like that, I think that he's correct on that. You have to be prepared, especially when you're expecting mass unrest like this.
Well, let me ask you something. And that's also the post you made on Facebook. Tell us a little bit about the war between Anonymous and the KKK.
Oh, yeah. Well, as everybody knows, Frank Ancona came out. He was also on Chris Hayes of MSNBC, and he had talked about using, he passed out 9,000 flyers requesting that people use lethal force on violent protesters, which, here's the thing, it's when you call a state of emergency, automatically everybody's thinking there's some ruckus going on down there that's not. So I think that Governor Nixon has actually incited a little bit of this unrest amongst people prematurely before this has even happened with the decision coming out. But so Anonymous, which is an online hacktivist group, had gotten wind of the flyer, which, was posted everywhere in videos and stuff like that, and they decided to make a video telling them, hey, look, you're not going to mess with the protesters. And here's the thing, is if you remember in the beginning of this whole thing with Michael Brown and the start of, the militarization response to the protesters, Anonymous came out right away back then and even said, hey, you need to leave the protesters alone because if you don't, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that went on as far as websites being taken down for days. Docs is where you get as much information about somebody as possible. The mayor there has had that happen to him, his parents. I mean, there are pictures of the chief of police. I mean, it was just a whole big thing with Ferguson. So Anonymous has been following Ferguson. So when the KKK put out this threat, Anonymous jumped in and said, listen, we're not having that. So we're going to take down your sites, which they did. They took 2 of their Twitter accounts over, actually, and they have a lot of information that's in those Twitter sites that they're disseminating right now from what I read online, that they're disseminating right now to come up with how they can connect the dots. I guess there is a whistleblower, but this information is so specific that it would link to this person and now they've threatened to kill Anonymous. So they said they threatened to kill you. I'm definitely in fear for my life because this information could definitely link to me. So when they took over this account, they're just disseminating through it to see what links that they can get. So they have unhooded a bunch of members. It just started in Ferguson, Missouri members, to where they're going through and telling people who's members of the KKK. There happens to be some allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly because I don't know for a fact, but allegedly Darren Wilson's girlfriend, who's also a police officer, has links to the KKK. And what I know for a fact is that Frank Ancona and 2 other KKK members were at the Darren Wilson support rally, and there were pictures of them there. So I know that for a fact. But it's just been a back and forth war because Anonymous, they're anonymous. They're invisible. You don't know who, once the information's out there, you don't know who gets it. You don't know what they're going to do with it. And I think that's the most threatening part of Anonymous, but they're definitely nonviolent. So Frank Ancona actually wrote a letter stating that they were going to rip the masks off all Anonymous members, threatening to shoot them and string them up next to the chimps, which I'm assuming they're talking about African Americans. And that's kind of caused some, chaos a little bit between the 2 groups. But there's different factions of the KKK. So the White Knights or something had said that they were going offline now and they weren't going to come back on because Anonymous just destroyed their websites.
So a lot has been going on with a lot of back and forth between, is it Frank Ancona? Is that how you pronounce his name?
What'd you say?
How do you pronounce the KKK's leader name? Frank what?
Ancona?
Ancona, that's it. So he's been going back and forth with Anonymous, but didn't he actually go on, was it CNN or MSNBC, and actually make threats against the protesters and say that he was going to kill them or harm them?
Yes, he said, well, what he said was, and if you read the flyer, Chris Hayes was actually addressing the flyer that was sent out, the 9,000 of them, which it calls for using lethal force against violent protesters. But as we know, they've always said the protesters were being violent, and that really wasn't the case. I was down there for a few days, and that wasn't the case at all. So that is, that was a consensus because of the militarization of the police tactics that they were using against protesters. Everybody thinks, well, they must have done something in order to have that happen. And that, like I said, being down there myself, that wasn't the case at all. So, yeah, he did. And then there was other threats where there was a young African-American man that he posted a picture of and said, I hope a bullet finds you in the back of the head. Maybe a late-night invasion where you and your family are killed. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the stuff that they post online. But Anonymous is like STL Cop on Twitter. Somebody was giving them information on safe houses for protesters, that if they run, this is where you can find them. I mean, and this is going back and forth. So they do have links, the KKK, within, these other organizations. It's just how detailed and nobody really knows.
So, for y'all who are not familiar with who Anonymous is probably a group of the most famous hackers, computer hackers there are. And, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I said,
Okay. Yeah, they're probably the biggest group of computer hackers there are. And they, very early on took up the cause of the Ferguson protesters and supported them. And I think initially they hacked into the Ferguson Police Department's website when this first happened. And, all of a sudden, then the KKK comes along and starts making threats against the protesters. And Anonymous came to the rescue of the protesters and started saying, listen, y'all need to back off with that. And when they didn't, they started exposing the website. The members of the KKK's website or members of the KKK organization. And so that's really what's been going on. So there's a lot of back and forth. But the KKK, it seems to me, they made threats based on the interview that I saw on NBC. But it looks like now they're backtracking and saying, well, we didn't say we was going to hurt nobody. We just said, everything other than what they really said. And so, in my opinion, I'm sorry?
Oh, no, I'll let you finish. I apologize for that.
Okay. And so, it's just so much going on down there. I mean, with the KKK making threats, and I wonder why, a mainstream news outlet would even give them coverage to say they were going to make threats against the protesters. That just seems like, really, like, why would they do that? And so there's a lot going on. And I think it's prayer time, definitely, for the people of St. Louis. And, for anybody who has any advice for the protesters, because, I'll be honest with you, I've never been a part of a protest in my life. I've heard a lot about the Montgomery boycotts and how successful they were, but I've never been a part of a protest. And someone sent me something in an inbox the other day and was like, why don't they do this, and this? That will solve the problem. And I said to that person, have you reached out to the leaders of the protest? Because it's probably something they never thought of, because I never thought of it. And I gave the information of how to reach some of the people that were in leadership down there, because I really thought it was a situation in which maybe they hadn't thought of. And so tonight, if you've got a suggestion for the protesters, if you think you know how to make the situation better, I think reach out to the leaders. Call in tonight. Tell us what you think. We'd like to hear from you, because I think, this is the calm before the storm. I think they are definitely in the eye of the storm right now, which is just that period of what appears to be calm just before all hell breaks loose. I think that's exactly what's about to happen. And I'm not instilling fear.
Well, I think that I'm saying that Michael Brown's father asked for a peaceful protest.
Yes,
the governor guaranteed the right to protest. That's a constitutional right. Now, if you have outsiders, agitators, if you have criminals that try to, in which they do, they take advantage and exploit these situations, that's no one can stop that. That's why the police is there. That's why other law enforcement authorities are there. Protesters are going to protest from the bridge down to probably maybe executive lease rent-a-car. But there's other areas throughout that municipality where people or little bands of individuals will strike here, strike there, break out windows, and tear out storefronts. And, that's not the protest. That's criminals that's taking advantage of the situation.
Right.
But how do you know they're not paid criminals? How do you know that they're not people that are paid to come in there?
I don't know if they paid. They may be. I don't know. Mr. Brown is not condoning that. The community is not condoning criminality.
And something I would like to say real quick is that, and this reference keeps being made about outsiders. I live 10 hours away from Ferguson, and I was there, and I was an outsider. And there were other people from Tibet and other parts of the world that were standing in solidarity with Michael Brown's family, as well as, on the side of justice and standing with protesters. And most of them, if not all of the ones that that I came across anyway, were peaceful. Like, my goal to go down there was to help with medical aid as a street medic, to assist when people were hurt, because there wasn't anything like that down there. They blow tear gas and wooden bullets at you, and a lot of people might have been hesitant to go seek medical attention because of the circumstances under which they got wounded. So it kind of makes me cringe every time I hear, these officials on TV talking about outside agitators. I mean, or people coming from the outside. There are a lot of people coming from the outside whose intentions.
Well, you know what the answer. You know what the answer is for that? A United States citizen has the right to go within any place within the 50 states of this union and protest. That's their constitutional protection. Just because you live in Oregon, that don't mean you can't go down to Florida to join in a peaceful protest. You have a right to do that.
And
so to call them outsiders and so forth is totally wrong.
Yeah. And I think that's just a way to try to deter people from coming in and helping the protest. And I would not be deterred if I was someone who wanted to go down there for the right reason, and that was just a protest for justice for Mike Brown. But I did hear some of that on CNN today, where they were saying all of these outsiders are coming in here and submerging on our city. And I thought, well, yeah, but if they're not causing a problem, what is the problem?
Absolutely. You got news crews from all over the world.
Pianki was, I believe that he was on to something that could be part of the demand, or part of the process of putting things that would help Ferguson and help a lot of other communities. It's kind of like a two-part. The first thing is that I think that things may have been drastically different if there had been some type of civilian police review authority that actually had some kind of authority, as Pianki said, with teeth in it. And then secondly, Pianki, could you maybe lend how individuals would go about establishing such a committee, a board, because most of those boards are made up of police officers in most cases, or city officials, which have a vested interest in keeping any liability off of the city. So, I mean, I do, but do you think also that this should be on the table for something for Ferguson to do that may be along with the boycotting? Because I think that things would have been different had there been some civilians that could have come in impartial, or at least not police officers, and been able to have a say in what should happen to that police officer as well.
Well, what happens to the police officer is being taken care of through the judiciary process of looking for probable cause with a grand jury. Of course, if there is, then this would be tried out in a court. We had two police chiefs and Ron Johnson on a radio program, and that what brought it. They know this McCullough, and they was told, say, why don't y'all sit down with him and say, look, why don't we do this in a court? You know how the population is all unrest and how they don't trust you, so why don't you put it in a court where it can be transparent, and if he's found to be guilty, let it be played out in the court.
You know what my thoughts are? My thoughts are this. Was Darren Wilson ever given a toxicology report after the shooting? Did anybody trust him?
I don't believe that he was. And there's something that irritates me is why the victims, such as Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, they're the victims of a violent crime and killed, and they get drug tested like they did something. Like drugs are the reason why they died. They know that drugs were not the reason why they died. It was a gunshot wound, and I'm so sick and tired of them doing that because it vilifies. They had pot in their system. So what?
I agree.
And here's another thing. If you on corner A and a police officer confronts a suspect, and him and that suspect get to tussling, the suspect pushes him down, and he runs down the corner G. Well, when they apprehend that suspect at corner G, they're supposed to take him to justice, not beat him up, not if the man, then charge him, because what happened at corner A was assault. Charge him with assault. But you have no right to deny a United States citizen, if they're a suspect, the process called due process, guaranteed by the 14th Amendment in the Fifth, I believe it's the Fifth Amendment. And that's it. And if they can't live by that, then they need to quit and go someplace else.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of running down the street, why have we been told repeatedly that Michael Brown died 35 feet from the car when it has been proven it was actually 148 feet? So was that intentional misleading? Because I know that whoever measured it should have been able to tell the difference between 35 feet and 148 feet.
Well, I know one thing. Michael Brown's body laid out there a long time because they were trying to figure out how to put a weapon on it. That's my take on it. And they couldn't do it.
Probably.
Right, everybody was around.
Well, I often wonder why the parents didn't raise a big enough stink when they were standing there. I would have been like, listen, I'm going to tear this street up unless y'all get my baby out of the middle of the street. So I do question why they stood there and did not do more to say it's hot out here.
Because they are law-abiding citizens in that area, contrary to what's been told.
Okay.
The tape was up, and the tape say do not cross, and they didn't cross.
Well, here's the other thing, too, is Darren Wilson did not even report that he had discharged his firearm or shot anybody to the Ferguson police for like 40 minutes. The dispatch audio that was released by Anonymous showed that she said, by the way, we just got a call that there were shots in the area. It wasn't by the police. And then she said, oh. And then she came back on and said, by the way, that comes from the media. We called Ferguson, and they say they still don't know anything about it.
See? That just shows you right there all the lies. The radio traffic, I listened to that radio traffic early on. That radio traffic had no call whatsoever. And now they're coming forward and saying that there was a call and in some kind of way his radio traffic jammed or something, due to the fight he and Mike Brown had.
No, what that is, that's why come Jackson has got to go. All this is occurring under his watch. And the mayor needs to resign, too, because he's the executive over the police chief. Both of them got to go. Yeah. And see, I'm going to tell you, we need to stop. We need to stop playing with these people. And that's why I mentioned last time on your show, citizens, especially young people, need to know the law, understand how the law applies. The police department has to be confined within the law in their behavior and actions. When they step outside of those confines, then they are prosecuted. Mm-hmm. The law has to be changed as it applies to deadly force, because if the law says that you can shoot somebody that's running away from you and not pose but you think, no, that law has to be changed. If I was on a jury, and see, a jurist has the right to do two things. One, they judge, they critique the facts, and two, they can critique the law. If they think the law is not right, then they can rule accordingly.
I agree. Listen, if you just tuned in, you come center stage tonight for the topic, Ferguson under a state of emergency. I'm Kheri Hines, your host. We're looking at everything tonight. Basically, should Bob McCullough step down? Jay Nixon step down? Your police chief down there in Ferguson, should he step down? And we definitely feel that, of course, Darren Wilson needs to resign. What do you think of the rules of engagement that the protesters are asking law enforcement to use? What do you think of the feud between Anonymous and the KKK? What do you also think of the fact that this protest could possibly turn deadly? Who knows? I'm not stirring up anything, and I pray to God that it doesn't. If it was up to me, the protest would go in the House, and everybody would do an economic boycott and shut it down. But that's just me. But we're going to go back to the phone lines. We're going to go to area code
Good evening. You're on center stage.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jamal. I'm a friend of AJ's listening in. I first want to say that everybody's been so eloquent and definitely informative. There's been some information that since I've been listening for over an hour now that I did not know. But as far as a specific opinion on some of the questions or issues that you just alighted on, the wholesale change from the mayor down is going to be difficult. From what my experience, it'll be closer to the situation. Obviously, Wilson's resigning or intending to resign and getting out of his job, trying to divert attention with regardless of the grand jury decision at this point. But and I feel with the brother. I would love to see this be treated as a black and white issue, and that the mayor would step down. He is responsible. He's that chief, so he needs to get out of there. It's under his watch. Same with the police chief. But I'm certainly unsure that's going to happen. And then not to jump around, but as you all were speaking about anonymous, I think that the internet and social media have charged this topic and this situation in such a way that the emotional response is wonderful. I'm 41, and I have participated. I heard the sister say she never participated in a protest. I participated in a protest as far back as the 12th grade. And this and as a participant, your only goal is supposed to be, I'm here to represent something as a part of this whole. I know AJ has those dreadlocks in his hair, and one thing we say is one dreadlock is stronger than one strand of hair. We all need to come together. But the emotional response has, and with the help of social media, I think it's jaded some of the truths that need to come out and some of the specifics. And I'm unsure, because I didn't hear from the very beginning who the one gentleman is, but he's speaking so eloquently on the subject in terms of there are some legalities and there is a lot of black and white specific issues that have to be dealt with that rhetoric and emotion have nothing to do with. And if people could get beyond that, it really will help. Personally, and I'll stop and listen, I feel that if there is some sort of explosion of violence or unrest or something, I personally, and not to be conspiracy theory guy, I think it's going to be a setup. I think that somebody's trying to do that. I don't feel that at this point. We've been talking about Ferguson a long time. If something happens, somebody's doing that on purpose, and not just any KKK who said they were going to do something.
Well, what's going on is the politics. Blacks' politics in this area is very strong. You're in a strong Democratic area there. And you got a strong congressman whose father served 32 years. He served about 16 years. Everybody loved this man. You've got state reps, and at one time you had two Muslims, Jafet El-Amin, her husband, T.D. El-Amin, another Muslim, Jamila Nasheed. You got a strong black politics that's in this area, and that's what's working. It's the politics. Anytime that protesters can put demands up, and black protesters at that, and they address them, that's politics. Anytime you got Minister Akbar, the spokesperson for the Nation of Islam, on CNN, that's politics working. And I hear people talk about that we shouldn't vote and black politics don't mean, no, that's politics. And it's whites down here also that's protesting. You got a constitutional right to protest, and never let anybody take that away from you. And that's what we're exercising here. The protest is going to be peaceful. Now, if somebody from the outside come in, they got a right to come from the outside and protest. You can go to Hawaii and protest. You can go to Alaska and protest. You can go to New Mexico and protest. You are a United States citizen. That's your right to do so. People from the north went down south during the Civil Rights era and got wet up by water holes and bit by dogs. They tried bringing dogs out here on this protest. The brothers went and got their pit bulls and chased the German shepherds away. They did. Absolutely, they did.
And, the thing is, this has been a protest like no other, though, Pianki. This has been a protest like no other.
You're absolutely. I'm so proud of the young people. I am so proud of what they're doing. And some of these old knuckleheads, they need to take their butt to the old folks' home and play bingo or something.
No comment. No comment. Because, the thing is, if it were not for some of the energy of these young people in this protest would have died a long time ago. And to the Ferguson protesters, listen, I commend you. I think somebody said something about making them the people of the year on one of those magazines. I absolutely think the protesters of Ferguson should get a Nobel Peace Prize. Put it out there. Listen, because they, I've seen how law enforcement has flipped it and keeps saying the protesters are attacking us and the protesters are throwing this at us. But the only violence that we've seen that's been recorded is we see police.
Well, what you had some outside agitators that would stand behind the protest and throw at the police. And matter of fact, the protesters grabbed him, and I told one guy, I said, you got a right to do a citizen arrest when you see someone that's committing a felony. Just make sure you got it. I told him you need to read up on it and exercise. If you see somebody there that's throwing at the police, that's trying to agitate some violent force, then you need to do a citizen arrest and arrest them. They had police officers that was walking in the crowds, and when you had police officers that was, for instance, putting the guns in front of black people, calling them niggers and saying, "I'll kill you, you animal," them cops got arrested. Those cops got arrested and got the hell out of there. When you had Ron Johnson, who's with the Highway Patrol, who was placed over the ground command, and when he was talking and giving orders to some of the white police officers and they turned their back on him, well, if that happens again, they getting the hell out of there. Matter of fact, that's refusing the command of a commanding officer. They should be locked up.
Go ahead. The one thing too, as an outside protester, and I've traveled to a bunch of places, New York City, Ferguson, D.C., a bunch of places to protest, is that there is a responsibility of an outside protester traveling in to meet the needs of the protest there, because I wasn't there I was there to stand with them. So if the mood was, I've watched live stream and I'd be bouncing around in my bed, no justice, because they're having a really good time and just peaceful, and they're taking a really tragic situation and showing that they can, make the best out of it, and they're just amazing people. And so as outside protesters coming in, they should follow suit and respect the protests that are already taking place and be there to assist in a productive manner. And like I said, I go to all different kinds. I go to ones where they're rat rousers and, like in Ferguson, not rat rousers, but, they're bouncing around and they're singing and just, awesome vibes. And then other ones like a GE protest where, they're playing hard rock and people are just standing around. And so obviously I'm not going to start, chanting no justice, no peace in a place where they're doing that. So it's fitting the mood of the protest. It's very, very important. And that's a responsibility. If you're there to help and you're there to help and you follow the mood, I never, ever, ever want to be responsible for going into a protest and doing something against the grain of what they're doing and causing any harm to anybody, and people have to be mindful of that when they go in. Your moves potentially can cause a huge, domino effect on everybody else, just like, for instance, and I'll go back to the KKK, Frankie and Connor. I mean, people all over that were trying to be secretive about their KKK membership were being put out in the forefront. Like, he made a bad decision to send out 9,000 flyers requesting lethal force on protesters, and now every KKK member was up for grabs by Anonymous. And that was crazy.
Well, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
When the Ku Klux Klan march, which they got a right to do, who protects them?
Mm-hmm.
The police. The police protect them. So if they putting out that kind of information, how would they like for somebody to put out that kind of information when they out there protesting for whatever reason? That the anti-Klan starts shooting at them.
Well, right, exactly. And there was a response News to Share had done, Trey Angle, he was down in Ferguson. I think he might still be there. Maybe he left yesterday. But anyway, he did an interview with some gentlemen that were down there, and he said, what do you think about the KKK clip? And it wasn't, I get what they were saying, KKK, come on, because we talk, and the gun, it was a video, and the gun that was used in there was fully registered, and so on and so forth, but just that we've become so hardened because of this stuff that's going on, and I don't blame them for being like, yeah, come on. If they've been assaulted enough by white police officers on a constant basis to where there's 3 wars per household on average, 80%, black stops as opposed to, just a few minor white stops. I mean, it's just ridiculous how that happens. So you have a group like the KKK who has tons of human blood on their hands over centuries of doing what they do, and I think enough is enough. So yeah, you're right. You can't just put stuff out there like that, and
that's why we demanding that these municipal police forces have local people on them. Not that blacks would be any nicer, but we're talking about an economic issue. Wilson stays in Crestwood. Right, Wilson stays in Crestwood. Black kids, Michael Brown could not go to Crestwood and get on the police department. Michael Brown has a right to serve his own community. All these forces, police departments that have all these white officers on them, that is going to change.
Gotta change.
That's got to change. My black grandson, my nieces and nephews cannot go to St. Charles across the river and get on that police department because they're not going to let it. So why is it that these cops that can't find a job there is coming into these black communities? Well, the only reason they're doing it is because you have a white chief or some white commander, and they're using the good old boy nepotism system. That has got to stop. That's why you have to have a separate entity until and use attrition. Attrition means that your new hires is working to have that racial balance. If you got 80% black, 20% white, when you need to see that on your public service. Now, you can't ask that of private businesses, but you sure in the hell can demand that of your public service because you are paying for that. If Wilson retired from Ferguson, he's going back to Crestwood. Michael Brown's family is going to continue to pay his pension instead of paying for the children's pensions that grow up, go to school, do the right thing, and should be working there on their own municipal forces. Not only should that happen in Ferguson, but that should be going on in Chicago. It should be going on in New Orleans. That need to be going on in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Blacks need to start working to do the right thing for their children.
Well, one thing I want to bring up about Darren Wilson real quick is that he, prior to going to Ferguson, was at the Jennings police department, which was disbanded because it was rampant with racial type of issues, and so everybody was fired. It was disbanded, and they had to build from the bottom back up again. I don't know why the media, that's well documented online. I don't know why the media isn't picking that up, but to me, he's a product of his environment. That's, and we don't know what else he's done that people, in the African American community, they get afraid to confront the police because of the repercussions for doing so.
What part of
confrontation either.
What part of St. Louis you say you live in?
I live in Erie, Pennsylvania. We have a lot of the same places.
Oh, okay. Erie. Well, after he left, you're right, they did disband Jennings Police Department because of all of the complaints about the black population there, which is about 99% against the all-white police department. And the city council disbanded and turned it over to St. Louis County. Well, that group, including Wilson tried to get on with St. Louis County. He couldn't do it there. Then he ended up at Ferguson. and that's how he's there. But we talk about I heard somebody make comments about Michael Brown's father, said he was an idiot and so forth and so on. Well, hell, Officer Wilson's mama was a convicted thief and liar, perjury, in court.
Wow.
His father wasn't there at the house with him. So you don't hear anybody saying that, well, because of the negative background that he came up under, because of the negative background of his parents, leads to him acting the way he is. But what did they say about Mike Brown? They started attacking his father and his mama.
Mm-hmm. They did. Listen, y'all, we're down to our last 29 minutes of the show. If you want to chime in tonight, you need to get on the phone line. The number is 347-850-8390. If you just tuned in, you come center stage tonight. We're talking about the topic, Ferguson, under a state of emergency. I'm Kheri Hines, your host. Listen, there's so much going on in Ferguson, I don't even know if we can cover it all in 2 hours. But we know the grand jury decision is close. We know that the school districts up there were asking for some advance notice as to whether or not, the grand jury decision was going to come in because they wanted to prepare themselves and prepare the parents as to how to take care of their kids in terms of finding, I guess, babysitters or whatever, and getting them home safely in the event that the announcement was made. So we know today the Jennings, Missouri school district, which borders Ferguson, canceled classes Monday and Tuesday out of caution for possible grand jury announcement. They were already going to have the latter part of the week off for the Thanksgiving holiday. We understand they've extended it now Monday all the way through Friday of this coming week. So that tells us something's going on as far as that's concerning. And we also understand from the Sun-Times that schools in southern Illinois are preparing for the Ferguson grand jury announcement. So that's an indicator something's going to go down. And we also know
schools in Russia too.
Okay. Well, no. I mean, I'm being very serious, Pianki. And
I'm being serious too because this is a worldwide the world has their eyes on this.
I agree. Well, we know that
you had protests. You did have protests in Russia.
Oh, I agree.
Boston too. Boston just said that they're not going to, that they know there'll be protests and that they're not going to dress in riot gear or anything because they feel it'll incite protesters, incite violence, I mean. So, I mean, at least, they learned from Ferguson. Obviously, Ferguson didn't learn from their own mistakes, but Boston learned from Ferguson.
Well, we know that the mayor has a business down there. Your Mayor Knowles, has a family business dealing with the Knowles Heating and Cooling. And we know today that they boarded up the windows in Ferguson. So when the mayor starts to board up his business, that ought to tell you that the announcement is close. We were hoping that we'd get the announcement before we left the air tonight, but maybe not. So if it doesn't, we are going to come live whatever day the announcement, maybe tomorrow, maybe Sunday, but we will be back live to talk about what happens post the announcement from the grand jury hearing the Mike Brown case. So we're going to do that. But this is where I'm at, y'all. As far as Ferguson is concerned, there's so many reasons for concern, in my opinion. And the thing is, if you're going to protest, be careful, be safe out there. And we also found out something about tear gassing. Tear gassing, wasn't you having to explain to me what tear gassing can do to you?
Yeah, it can actually cause some respiratory issues, and I did actually further research after I was on the show last time, and it said it can actually make you temporarily blind and some other things, and who knows, maybe cause, permanent eye damage. But if you are within 1,000 feet of the dispersal of tear gas, you have to decontaminate all of your clothes. So, I recommend that somebody bringing even a change of clothes in a separate area from where they're at, maybe in their car, in their trunk, and then a plastic bag that they can change their clothes and put the contaminated clothing in the plastic bag and seal it until it can be washed. but you have to decontaminate your clothes by washing them about 3 times, wash your hair, fingers, nails, anything. And I would recommend only bringing things to the protest that are washable, just because you'd want to get that off of there. But it can cause respiratory issues. My friend was down there. We were within 1,000 feet. We weren't super close, but we were far enough away, and to where it didn't affect our eyes and our breathing. But he ended up with pneumonia, and his doctor had told him it was because he didn't decontaminate his clothes when he was in that area.
See, that's what we're talking about, y'all. I mean, those
people have to be safe. People have to be safe.
And
that's why protests should be organized. They need to be well organized in order to protect the protesters, those who's going to participate, and to order to protect yourself from getting in trouble.
And don't be fooled, y'all. Dr. King was a part of many protests, but Dr. King and all of them were trained on how to protest. So it is an art to it. And when I say that, I mean training is needed because, I mean, there are possibilities of being attacked by dogs, and they were trained on what to do and how to handle that and how to handle being water hosed and tear gas and all that other stuff. And so I think whoever is considering going down there and being a part of the movement, you definitely want to take into consideration, have I talked to somebody who can give me some indicators of what to do? That's why when people early on wanted Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson to step aside, I really kind of question whether or not that was really wise, because you can always learn something from the old swords. And I think they knew things about the protesting that the new boots, had to learn the hard way.
And what else is needed? You know what else is needed? White people need to protest too, because they know doggone well your kids have been abused by the police. We just had another incident with a white elderly farmer on his own property where the police pulled him off the track and beat him up. White people, you had the kid that was in a coma. That ain't the only Michael Brown. We had a white Michael Brown that was killed. Of course, this was years ago. But white Americans whose children, whose wives, whose husbands are being abused and mistreated and having their civil rights abused by the police, you need to protest also.
And I think sometimes, for whatever reason, a lot of white people don't think that they are going to be affected by police brutality. For whatever reason. I guess because right to this day, there's been so few. But the situation is they're happening. You know what I'm saying? If they're allowed to get away with it, there will be more. And I think that's what
I've seen whites shot down by the police also, Kheri, and it might not be as more often as we hear in the African American community, but it does go on, and they need to complain about it. Their loved ones is not no less valuable than the loved ones in the black community.
And
I think they're safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. There's a movement right now that's called Black Lives Matter. I agree, y'all. Black life does matter. And I think standing up in this protest, that's what it's all about. It's the fact that Mike Brown's life did matter. And the next Mike Brown that will come after him and all those that went before him, their lives matter too. And I think that we got to realize that, because today somebody else, tomorrow you. And I think so many people are missing that. I see so many people being politically correct, as I spoke earlier about, and they're thinking, it's not affecting me. I got a house, I got a car, I got a couple coins in the bank. The dollar's getting ready to collapse any day, y'all. I mean, seriously, ain't nothing certain. And so, but one thing, I should say, except for one thing, we know that if we don't do something, it will happen again. And I just think police officers, law enforcement needs to be put on notice. Then listen, you cannot go around shooting people down in the street without consequences. If you can't,
the only way you can stop that, you got to change the law. I keep telling you, nobody wants us. You got to change the definition of deadly force. I'm sorry, that's the only way it's gonna stop.
you also have to have people to follow that law and that definition too, because there has to be respect for the law in order for somebody to follow it. So if they just disregard the law, if they've got laws in other places where they have to actually wear body cams, and they wear them, but they don't turn them on.
Well, that's another thing we got across too with the body cam. But see, the state law for as it defines deadly force is so broad and vague. A law is passed by a state legislature, it becomes statute. Then the agencies that statute applied to is the agency heads that read the statute, and they determine what the statute is saying by making rules and regulation based on their interpretation. That's why if a black kid in Ferguson would do something, and a white kid in Maryland Heights, which is West County, would do the exact same thing, the response to the black kid would be different than the response to the white kid. Black kid would get shot, white kid would be handcuffed. It's because the agency heads are interpreting the law and say, well, in this case you do this in Ferguson. People in Maryland Heights say, well, in this case you do this. That's what my understanding of it. So the law has to be more precise, it has to be more specific and more focused. And then you constrain them. If they step outside those constraints on what they do, when they do it, and how they do it, then you go after them. You prosecute them. You prosecute against their bond. When you go against their bonding company, if the grievance and the damage that they have done is beyond the limits of their bond, then you go after their personal effects, their house, their boats, their rifles, their chewing tobacco.
Everything. And y'all listen, a police department has to be under somebody's umbrella. That's under your city manager, or they maybe call something else in a different area, but the administration of the city manager, the mayor, the city council, the police department falls under that umbrella. If you got police officers or police chiefs that are not operating as they should, take your pen and paper and get on your computer or make phone calls. But those people are overseen by that group of people. Make sure that you let your voice be heard. Don't let one officer continue to do things that you know are not acceptable. I personally had a situation with the Fort Worth Police Department. Repeatedly, I wrote in on the police chief. I mean, the harassment got to be out of control. I mean, I was fearful, and still am fearful, of living in my own house in Fort Worth. That said, I was not going to let it not be heard by I was not going to let my voice not be heard that this was a problem, and this man's behavior was bordering on malfeasance. Chief Jeff Halstead had lost control. I mean, in my opinion, he lost his mind with all the harassment that he put me under, and still has, and still is doing. But I wrote the manager, the city manager, I wrote the city mayor, and I wrote every member of the city council repeatedly because I wanted documented that the harassment was going on. I think the same applies to every single one of these police officers that are misbehaving on the street. Write in on it, because you know what? Maybe the police chief is not reprimanding them, but maybe if the city sees a pattern, if the city manager sees a problem, if your city council sees a problem, maybe then something can get done. And I think we forget sometimes that if we're going through something, we think that nobody else is, but you sometimes don't know who else is experiencing the same thing. And if everybody took it upon themselves to document these types of things, maybe it wouldn't happen as often. You agree with that?
I'll tell you something else. We had in South County, which is all white, Charles County Shopping Center, where a St. Louis County sergeant, I believe, went over there and took command. And his first orders was, let's make the jails here more colorful. I say it again. He said, let's make the jails more colorful. And basically what he was saying is that they want to start profiling blacks that's coming over in South County Shopping Center. Well, it was two white police officers that didn't like that, and they complained. And I think they, went beyond the person that was in charge there. Well, they started receiving all kind of repercussions. And the one officer, and this is in the newspaper, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. This is in the newspaper. The commander's name was Hayes. I can't remember his first name. He asked a desk sergeant, "Why am I being treated like I am?" And the desk sergeant said, "Well, you got a target on your back." And here's the point. If you have a police officer, they should be protected by that. What's that law if somebody tells? I can't think of the name of it. If somebody reports something.
Whistleblower.
Yeah, whistleblower. They should be protected by a whistleblower. They should have whistleblower protection also. And if anybody threatens an officer for being a whistleblower, they should receive the strongest prosecution that you can possibly give them. Because basically what you're doing, you're intimidating and you're threatening to cause bodily harm and maybe even take the life of this officer.
Hey, listen, I agree with that. I mean, because we know that code blue thing it runs deep. I mean, that fraternal order police, that runs deep. I mean, and we know rarely does an officer tell on another officer. So in order, to get, a police officer to come forward on bad officers, something has to change because they have to feel like they're going to be protected once they're out on the street and not be set up. So I absolutely agree that, if you're going to ask them to do that, that's going to be the case. But we found out with the situation in Ferguson, there's a lot of KKK embedded in the police. So you got a lot of evil on these forces. And what can we do? I mean, what can we do to change some of that? I mean, there's so many layers to this.
Well, you're gonna have to change your hiring system. That's what you got to do. I'm sorry, it's what you got to do. They've done it in the city of St. Louis, where now 48% of the senior command is black, 25% of the junior command is black, 50% of this year's recruits that's in the academy is black. So they represent the city of the black population in the city of St. Louis. That's what has to be done.
Wow.
I don't know of any blacks as members of the Ku Klux Klan, do you?
No. So what, AJ?
No, this is Jamal. I would just want to ask the brother, as he suggests that, is it a situation where in a town like Ferguson, where I've heard and read that there's such a high black population, but obviously not any African American officers, is it that blacks are trying to join the force, or why is there such a low percentage of black cops on their force?
Well, that's why I say there needs to be an concerted effort to get more young people to get involved in these professions. I mean, they good paying jobs. Heck, people wouldn't drive 25 miles to get the job if they wasn't paying some money. If they can raise a family, pay for a house, and save for college in their own community, don't you think that blacks should be also afforded to those type of jobs? Don't you think that would be attractive to them too? So the answer is that there needs to be more of an assertive effort to get more young people coming out of high school, get them into junior college to fulfill what prerequisites that they need to have the application on file at this separate agency, and when the police department is looking for new hires, they got to go to this agency. You can't get on the phone and call up your friends. Fire department too, public works also, city hall too.
Let me ask a quick question though. Do you think because the majority of Ferguson is predominantly black, or not black, but predominantly poor also, that their education is substandard? So if they have a substandard education, it's not so much that they don't want to apply, but they wouldn't qualify because they're not meeting educational standards because they're learning from outdated textbooks or the crowded classrooms, grumpy teachers, whatever the case may be.
Well, not to be funny, but the actions we seen out of Officer Wilson was a demonstration of somebody that's ignorant. I mean, period. And you got a lot of ignorant whites that's on these police departments. Try to read some of their reports. So what I'm saying is,
but in
go
reality,
ahead, Kheri.
I don't think you have to be educated like a college degree to work on a police force in most cases.
You're right.
Do you?
What did what did Gerald say? Didn't he say that he was talking to somebody, or somebody was questioning who had something to do with the test, and they said if you make the test any weaker, you might as well hire anybody.
Wow.
Well, I thought you had to have at least 2 years. I know in Pennsylvania you have to have at least a 2-year degree in order to do it, or military background.
I think that's the worst thing you could have is a military background. Those people's got something wrong with their mind in a lot of cases.
Yeah, me too. Well, the biggest thing is it's now become us against them mentality, to where a negotiation is no longer a negotiation; it's a full clip in the chest. There's, like you had mentioned before, with the community policing. That's the way you build bonds within the community. Then your community starts to cooperate more; they commit less crimes, and a whole bunch of other things. But now you've got cops that are driving 25 miles, as you said, in order to get into their job, and they have no connection, no value within the community in which they're supposed to serve. So the only person they're really serving is themselves, because they're just there for a paycheck, not to protect and serve, essentially.
You're right. Some of them come there for other reasons. I tell you something else that needs to be done too, along with the National Registry. When trainers come in to train the police, that trainer's material, his curriculum, needs to be reviewed by an outside committee to make sure that it's not inflammatory, it's not excitable. You understand what I'm saying? You couldn't take a curriculum, or you couldn't take books and put them in a public school without the principal or that school board going over those books to see exactly what the children are going to be exposed to. Same thing needs to be done in a police classroom. When trainers come in for whatever type of professional development, whatever, that material has to be reviewed to make sure it's not inflaming attitudes or creating biases.
I agree. Area code 314-853. Your phone line is back open, and area code 111111. I'm not sure if that's the same person that dropped off and came back.
This is Nanny again.
Yes.
And I wanted to clear up one issue. President Bush, baby Bush, had declared a state of emergency in New Orleans on the Saturday before Katrina hit, which was the 27th, and Katrina landed at 29th. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that the Patriot Act, how much does it contain concerning civil unrest? That's a question on the table. And the other thing is that you can see a video on YouTube, and it's the person, it's called News to Share, News, the number 2, Share. And the title of the video is Anonymous Threatens KKK and Ferguson Police. And you can get other videos of what's been going on. But this particular video was uploaded on the 20th of November. And also I wanted to mention that the civil rights movement during the 60s was young folk. So that is not new to means of protest. Those majority of the people were young. So good night, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for the information, ma'am.
Thank you. O'Connor, we're going to close out with you. You have another comment?
Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
We're listening. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, you know what? If you all are listening, when you look at this thing, that's what's happening. Anything that you benefit from, and I keep saying this, anything that you benefit from, you're not going to give it up. Racism and discrimination is going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing that you can do about it, no matter how you got Ku Klux Klan members right there in Washington, D.C. Most of them, your congressmen, your state representative. These people are Klansmen. The only way that black folks can make it is that they got to learn how to defend themselves. And the only way you can defend yourself is with knowledge. That's the power of black people is knowledge. And if you don't get that, you're going to continue to lose this war. And if you look, see, I think Miss Kheri Kheri, I don't think you see the things that I see. When I see young girls 23 years old with 2 and 3 children, when I look at a reel cost $29, when I look at cornflakes it's $5 a buck, how do they think they're going to survive and take care of their children? And they study having these children, they're growing up, they're not teaching them anything, they into hair and tattoos right now. They're not thinking about what you are talking about.
But see, you say that as though that's not happening in other races, and it is. Because the welfare world is not mostly made up of African Americans, because we only make up 13% of the population. So we know that could not be true. But we know the images we see on TV gives us the impression that that's true. But this is the one thing I will agree with you with. Racism will exist until we leave here. But I think how we respond to racism going forward has changed. I think the protesters in Ferguson have changed that. And if we don't follow suit, we're crazy, because I'm not going to slavery. You know, it's not happening for me. And I think the protesters in Ferguson, the young ones, they feel the same way. And I think they have awakened a sleeping giant in most of us that says, get up and fight. It's now or never. And so I think, you know, I'm going to rise to the occasion. I'm going to use this platform and other means to support the protesters, and I suggest that everybody else do the same.
I support the protesters. I support the protesters too. I really do. And I think that if this thing come down, I think a lot of young people are going to be shot down. Just ordinary white folks that have guns going to kill black people. And you know what they're going to say? They say that their life was threatened. And who's going to do anything about that?
You know what? I agree. Stand your ground. Y'all, and listen, go to our archives. We've done several shows. I think we've done the Stand Your Ground, Make My Day. What was the other one called? Castle Doctrine. We've done shows on that repeatedly. I suggest everyone get familiar with those shows and what that law is all about, because it's called different things in different parts of the country. In some parts of the country, it's called Castle Doctrine. In other parts of the country, it's called Make My Day. In other parts of the country, it's called Stand Your Ground. That's it. I agree with what he just said. I think that the racial element of this protest is going to kick off to another level, and I think that we probably will be targeted. So you definitely need to understand your rights in your state as far as stand your ground and how to protect yourself legally, because I think everyone should have a permit to carry. I think everybody needs a weapon, and I think you need to know the law in your state. I think that's absolutely necessary, because stand your ground is a tricky law. We know it let Zimmerman get off, and we know that the man that shot the young man over loud music, he went to prison. So it's a tricky law, like I said, and you need to learn it based on the rules in your state. I'm sorry.
And look what they're doing to Bill Cosby right now.
No, listen,
well, that's some overzealous women. That's a whole different program.
But it shows the racism, though. I don't care what.
But you know what? Many of them women are white women, and white women have always said they was raped by black men.
And that's what I'm saying. You see, that's something happened 30-something years ago, and they still talking about what happened to the DNA. Did any of those women report that to the police? If they had reported that.
That's all subject.
Okay. Thanks for listening to my call.
No. I'm not asking all time. This is what I'm saying. This is what I was about to say. There should not ever be a statute of limitation on a woman being raped. So let's put that out there, first of all. Second of all, we're not going to sacrifice Darren Wilson for Bill Cosby.
I'm just saying the racism, that's all. I'm just talking about how the racism.
Well, that's a different topic, but
it's a different topic, but it's still racism. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it is. Nobody's not saying that. But I think that I hope that whatever happens, I hope it's peaceful. People's rights are not trumped over. And if there are individuals out there that try to commit criminality, because the community does not want criminality, they just want justice. That's what they want. Every citizen should be afforded justice.
I appreciate listening and talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, caller. Listen, y'all, we got to get ready to get out of here. But again, whenever the decision comes in, whether that be tomorrow, tonight, if it comes in tonight, we will be back on tomorrow talking about the Mike Brown grand jury decision. If it comes in Sunday, we'll be back on the air talking about it Sunday evening. And listen, somebody sent me something this week, y'all, and I just wanted to share it with y'all because I think it's very profound and I think it's very timely. The person chooses to be anonymous, or unknown, I guess I should say. I want to say anonymous, but unknown, so we're not going to call their name, but they called this boycott. And it says, if we can't get it, shut it down. No holiday shopping town to town. No justice, no peace, or holiday wreath. Because Black Lives Matter, we sacrifice, and Mike Brown paid the ultimate price. That's boycott, y'all. For boycotting economic shopping for Thanksgiving and Christmas spending, I think everybody should adhere. As far as I'm concerned, if we can't get it, and that is an indictment on Officer Darren Wilson, shut it down. Listen, guys, we'll see you all. Hopefully, if the announcement is tomorrow, we'll be back on the air tomorrow. If not, we'll be back on Sunday if it comes in on Sunday. Okay, until then, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
You took my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where they feel like they don't got nothing to live for anyway.
Usually I might clown, but right now, this one's for Mike Brown, so pipe down. We gotta stop all the rioting in the streets. We ain't doing nothing but proving we animals to police. Another child dies, another mother cries. Another neighborhood left with a whole bunch of wives. Why did they pursue him? Why they had to shoot him? But I don't think that the answer is everybody looting. Or forget that cop, he deserves state time. They let Zimmerman off, this cop ain't learned from Trayvon. I'm just sitting here dropping a little tear of knowledge. Cause Mike Brown ain't even lived to see a day at college. He would've started soon that as an empty seat in class. All because of these demons hiding behind a badge. So screw that badge, screw your protection. And screw that law, carry your weapon. But some of these stores y'all looting is black owned. I know it's for a cause, but some of them still have families at home. It's not a black or white thing, it's about abusing the law. I can't imagine Dorian's face when he saw Mike fall. My tears wetting the page while I'm writing this. I know y'all so in tune, if you not, why you fighting it? Just let go, let your heart beat and never lose control. And God rest his soul, cause I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown, he represents us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police. So how I know I ain't gonna end up under a similar sheet. So I am Mike Brown, cause I'm out here with my homie. I'm just walking my block, man, everybody know me. So I am Mike Brown, I am Mike Brown, I am Mike Brown, homie, I am Mike Brown, I am Mike Brown.
He shot again, and once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the earth, and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn, and he fired several more shots.
I am Mike Brown, I am Sean Bell, I am Larry Davis bleeding in my dingy cell. I am Angelo Clark, I am Oscar Grant, I am Dante Price doing what you others can't. I am Bo Morrison, Melvin Lawhorn, I am the voice of these people cause they are long gone. Let's go behind the badge, fall behind the beat, behind the politics. They wonder why we don't trust police. They wonder why we carry nines on us. They look for drugs but shoot for anything they find on us. I am Justin Sitt fighting for my life kicking, slowly dying cause police said I look suspicious. We are all of these people in so many ways. I am Raymond Allen, left to die for 2 days. I just bought a new hoodie, guess I'm Trayvon. I am Dwayne Brown, lay down, try not to die. On the halls I feel my heart beating slower, listen. And all you dealing with is maybe gonna lose your pension. You might not notice this, but this the new form of lynching. I got my hands up, but still I see that cop inching. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. I am Mike Brown, he represents us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police. So how I know I ain't gonna end up under a similar sheet. So I am Mike Brown, cause I'm out here
get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this